Good evening. So I researched the Underground Railroad, and you can imagine my complete delight when I realized that the Treasury of the Secretary of the Treasury announced that after surveying millions of Americans, that they were going to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. And I want to talk to you about two things tonight. One is about that, and the other, of course, is about the Underground Railroad and the deeper meaning of what it means to have Harriet Tubman on that bill. She will represent America around the world. So first, I want you each right now to take out your wallet. I want you to look inside of it. I want you to look and see how much money you have. Okay? I want you to decide whether or not you had dinner or not. Did you have lunch? Did you eat? What's in your stomach? What clothes do you have on? What shoes are you wearing? Because you're going to have to leave right this minute from an oppressor. You're going to have to escape. And this is what I look at. People who have to leave and have to escape, sometimes on a moment's notice, sometimes after lots of planning, but they leave with very little, often with just the bundle, the satchel, and the clothes on their back. So when you start to think about how much it takes to come out and escape and leave everything that you have known, this is the type of thing that I study when I look at the Underground Railroad. And you have to imagine that the oppressor that you are escaping is your own government. After 1850, the federal government passes what's called the Fugitive Slave Act. It makes it a crime for you to seek your freedom if you're held in slavery. And if you make it to the North, it makes it the responsibility of every citizen to help bring you back into slavery. This is the country that is happening in 1850. Harriet Tubman escapes in 1849. By 1850 and 51, she's already coming back. She's already coming back to rescue her family. She's rescuing her friends. She's rescuing her neighbors. So I ask you, how many of you have people in your lives that you would risk your life for? Once you got your freedom and you knew you were out of the clutches of slavery, would you go back? Would you engage and go back to save other people? This is what Tubman did time and again. She brought dozens and dozens of people out of slavery. When you really understand that she brought groups of people out, she brought at one point 9 people and at another point 11. But what you have to understand is that Harriet Tubman was a woman who was barely 5 feet tall. You have to entrust yourself and put your life in the hands of a woman who can neither read nor write, because most of the laws in this same oppressive country said that literacy for blacks was against the law. You are going to entrust your life, your freedom, and your well-being with a 5-foot-tall woman who can neither read nor write. She cannot tell time by conventional clocks. And she had a traumatic brain injury. Around the age of 13, she was hit in the head with an iron, and she was subject to narcolepsy and fits of sleeping at inconvenient times for the rest of her life. This is the woman that's going to lead you to freedom. Would you go? Would you trust her? This is what I look at. And Tubman is not alone. These group escapes, when she brought the 9 and 11 people out, she brought children out, she brought husbands and wives out of slavery. But these groups escapes are not something that is an anomaly. They happen frequently. This is one of my favorite ads. If you look at it, of course, now don't do the math because it's wrong, but it's 24 people escaped in this ad. But what I want you to look at is that there are 11 children There are 5 men, 3 women, 6 boys, and 11 children. Now, I don't know about you, but if anybody has ever even tried to take a vacation with 2 children, you know the nightmare that can be. You know the logistical nightmare of trying to do something like this where you're setting up, you have to feed people, you have to take care of them. You have to do all of these things to take care of people, and Tubman and others like her are moving multiple people out of slavery. Often when we do our studies, we often think about that solitary person escaping on foot, but this is a mutual, beneficial, cooperative work that's going on, and we don't usually hear about that aspect of people having their back, people looking out for you, people trying to get you out of slavery, and trying to get their children out of slavery. And where are they going? Tubman often went from Cambridge, Maryland to St. Catharines, Ontario. It is a distance of 450 miles, and if you're traveling on foot non-stop, it'll take you at least 6 days. If you're traveling at night and in the winter, non-stop, it's going to take you at least 12 days. That's over paved roads, highways, and moving thoroughly and consistently through the landscape. This is not moving with babies and mothers and people who are sick. This is moving through the landscape under the direct kind of expedient ways that we can travel. Can you imagine if you left now with the money in your pocket and the shoes on your feet and the clothes on your back? And then you had to depend on people when you got there and when you started to move out. This is the world that Tubman is facing. But the world that we're given historically, and what we've been taught for so long, was that kindly and benevolent Quakers helped poor, degraded, shivering, frightened African Americans out of slavery. This narrative has stayed with us for such a long time that it's taken probably to the 21st century. I think the new scholars are breaking this idea, but this was the look that we had. And because African Americans were not allowed to read and write, they weren't there to write their own narratives, and so their own stories did not come forward as readily. So the stories of people taking action, taking agency, taking matters into their own hands is a story that you don't usually hear. And yet we know that women are out there and they are coming out of slavery. I have a story of a 12-year-old girl who led her blind mother out of slavery. When you begin to really understand the power and the depth of what is going on in this time period around escape from slavery, then we begin to have a whole different understanding of what it means to come out of slavery. Now, we just looked at the night sky. How did it come out? Well, you've heard about the North Star, and if you are a scientist and you're looking at the night sky, you know all the names of the stars, you know what you're looking at, you see the Big Dipper, you see the Little Dipper. If maybe you're not so sophisticated, you at least know the Big Dipper and you know the Little Dipper, and you know you go down through the Big Dipper, you go across to the handle of the Little Dipper, and there is the North Star. But this is the night sky that people like Tubman would have been looking at. This is the night sky that someone who can't read or write and has to look at symbols, has to organize their lives in a different way because their understanding is not diminished, just their capacity to learn to read and write never came. So the night sky is one of the ways in which they come out of slavery. So I have been looking at Black communities and their relationship to the Underground Railroad. And I'm out to remap America. That's my quest. I'm looking at a Black critical geography, something that we haven't seen yet. And in this remapping, I'm looking at all of these Black communities along the borders, along the rivers. Because although when you're escaping from slavery, you may not know that you're going to be going to these places. Sometimes, though, you know that your mother escaped before you, or your brother, or your sister, or your father, and they're in one of these places, and you're trying to make it to them. Much of what happens in Black history is around family, but we don't ever hear it that way. so that you can come out, and the first places that you're going to be encountering on the most dangerous parts of your journey are often these little black communities hidden away, very much secluded, on the water's edge. These are the places where people are trying to get to before they're often taken to the Quaker communities. They do go there, but they don't often go there first. The places that are the most dangerous when you escape from slavery are the ones right close to the southern border, and those are often controlled by African Americans. Now, I'm an archaeologist, and so one of the ways in which we know about these black communities is that we go out, we survey, we look for them, we hear about them, we either dig them up, excavate them, or survey them and understand how can we find them and how can we begin to map them. The place that I really always like to talk about is Timbuktu, because in my book I talk about the geography of resistance, and everything that is a part of geography of resistance is on this sign. You see the name, first of all, so place names are very important. They're telling you that this is a space that could be occupied by blacks. You see that it is on Blue Jay Hill, and hilly land and undesirable land is one of the things that we look for because African Americans can't often afford to buy the most expensive land and the best land, or people aren't willing to sell it to them. You can see that there are Quakers in association with them and that they are settled by both free blacks and people who have escaped from slavery. All of these things that I look for when I'm looking at the Underground Railroad. But I also know that they talk about the AME Zion Church here, and then they go on to talk about the cemetery, they talk about the blacks in the Civil War. All of these are components of what I call the geography of resistance, and all of these are markers that I'm looking for when I'm identifying Underground Railroad sites. This is a small black church in Illinois, in Rocky Fork, Illinois, and if you think about the name of the place, you know that it's rocky, so that's what's wrong with the land. But these churches, whether they're Baptist or AME or AME Zion, or if we're in the East, it might be the Colored Presbyterians, any of these denominations are participating in and helping people come out of slavery. One of the persons that I've been studying who is plaguing me, I guess it's the only way to put it, is William Paul Quinn. Everywhere this man went, every church that he started, we have now decided from reading and reading and reading was an Underground Railroad stop. But I want you to consider that he's a man of God. He was highly esteemed. He was the fourth bishop of the AME Church. He was a very upright citizen. I need you to think about the moral courage that it had to take. Because remember, what was legal was immoral. And what was moral was illegal. How do you reconcile those things when you are functioning in this way? So these are the things that I need you to start to think about, because people like Quinn are trying to be loyal, true, upright, forthright Americans. But they're also trying to be loyal, true, upright, and forthright for their people as well. So one of the things that I've often said to you is that I look at cemeteries, I look at the landscape, and I know that I'm going to be seeing, wherever I go, Civil War graves, Civil War markers, because the quest for freedom is a longitudinal one. You might start from when you first get here, in whatever capacity you get here, but it goes all the way through to the Civil War. People are very interested in the Civil War because it is the last fight for freedom. But when I'm out in the field, I'm seeing these small monuments, I'm seeing these small graves. But when I think about the monuments to the Confederacy that we have erected around this country, when I think about the monuments to the losers, to the insurrectionists, to the rebellious, the Confederate States of America, they're massive and they're mammoth. This is Jefferson Davis, and this, of course, is for Robert E. Lee. So when you think about the monuments that we have erected to people who have lost the war, it should be a small gesture then to come back and think about putting Tubman on the $20 bill. If you begin to think about Harriet Tubman and the role that she played and what she delivered for us, the message that's going to go around the world on the face of the currency with this black woman on American currency is going to be for people around the world to begin to enter into a conversation about what it meant to be free, what it meant to stand up and have the moral courage to live your life in a way that was consistent with your beliefs. So when I think about Harriet Tubman, and when I think about her role on the $20 bill, I start to think about leadership. This woman defies our definition of leadership. Anything that you can think of, she did not possess. She's small, she can't read, she can't write, and yet she is defying the slave captains who are looking for her. She is defied. She's never caught. None of the people she leads out of slavery ever get turned back. When you think about her accomplishments, they are huge. When you think about the ingenuity that this woman had to show, when you think about the bravery, all of the kinds of virtues that we want to think about, Harriet Tubman possessed them. And she's just emblematic of people who escaped from slavery and who are leading others out of slavery. So my work on the Underground Railroad has been to look at all of the different ways that people show intelligence when there's no intelligence test. How do we know that you're brilliant when you can't read or write? How do we know that you have ingenuity when you can't display it on a written test? Harriet Tubman is on the $20 bill, and she's going to take a message around the world. And it's this message that I think, as Americans, we should be very proud that she's going to carry with her imprint on the money. So I'll leave you with the words of my colleague, Betty Duramus, when she said, Harriet Tubman, she's right on the money. Thank you.